Parasitology. Let's take a look at your introduction to your clinical parasitology. When you say parasitology, that is the study of those living closely to each other. And yes, another definition of parasitology is that is an area of biology concerned with the phenomenon of dependence of one living organism on another. Okay, that is why in parasitology, we have what is you call the parasite, the one that is dependent, and then your host, okay, and so that is where your dependent organism depends upon. Ay, ala, dakas Jay. Anyway, yes. When you say clinical parasitology, this one deals with the study of organisms who take up their abode on or within a living organism. Is it, sabi niya dito is it is on because you have an endoparasite and an ectoparasite. Okay. And yes, who take up their abode on or within a living organism for the purpose of producing food and shelter. And another one is this one is concerned with primarily the parasites of humans and their medical significance. Again, when you say clinical parasitology, there should be this medical significance or clinical significance as well as of course their importance in human communities. That is for clinical parasitology. Of course, our course description is clinical parasitology. That is why we will be taking a look at the significance, okay, of these parasites. We'll be taking a look at the disease cause, the diagnosis, and others. Yes, let's take a look at a definition of the following terms utilized in this course, no, in this clinical parasitology. Now, let's take a look at your types of association of living organisms. Your symbiosis. Your symbiosis, this one is a phenomenon where two or more organisms that differ phylogenetically, or this is unlike they are not related organisms, exist over a substantial time, or there is a close association between different organisms. Okay, again, in symbiosis, there is, if this is the phenomenon where two or more organisms differ phylogenetically exist over a substantial time. And example of this symbiosis, symbiotic relationship, you have your parasitism, mutualism, commensalism, and others. Predation is also part, no? Yes, let's take a look at your parasitism. When you say parasitism, this one member benefits from the other at the same time. It causes harm. Okay, that is for parasitism. And with this, there is an infection by one or more species of organism classified as parasite. In parasitism, you have the parasite and you have the host. Again, in parasitism, you have a parasite and you have a host. And yes, one member benefits from the other at the same time. It causes harm. The parasite benefits and also it causes harm. Your parasitic organism cannot live separate from the host as the organism in or upon which the parasite lives or exists accordingly. This, again, in parasitism, the parasite either harms its host or in some sense lives at the expense of the host. No, it harms as such by what they call this, its mechanical activities. It at the expense of host, it will consume uh, some nutrition that is taken in by your host. No? Okay. Moving on, your mutualism. This one is association between two organisms. And then both organisms benefit from each other but can survive without each other. That is for mutualism. And then in commensalism, one benefits from the other without injuring the other. Okay, that is for commensalism. One benefits from the other without injuring the other. An example of a commensalism is uh, the relationship between your human and your Entamoeba gingivalis. Another good example is your orchids that is present in your trees, such. Okay, next, let's take a look at your parasite. Your parasite, again, this one is an organism that obtain food and shelter from another organism and derives all the benefits from the relationship. Okay, this one usually, your parasite, usually this one is a weaker organism, a smaller organism. And yes, again, it derives all the benefits from your relationship. But then you have two types of parasite based on the habitat. You have two types of parasite based on the habitat. You have your ectoparasite and your endoparasite. Your ectoparasite, this one is a parasite that temporarily invade superficial tissues of the host. Your ectoparasite, again, these are parasites that temporarily invade superficial tissues of the host. Okay, like let's say for example, your louse. Okay, this one is an ectoparasite. While your endoparasite, this is a parasite that resides inside the host. Okay, and so they penetrate your skin and mucous membranes and it will go into your internal organs as such. They will go into your tissues. So, and you call this one as endoparasite. Again, this endoparasite, they reside inside the host. And this endoparasite is further classified into four. You have hematozoic, cytozoic, Cenozoic, and Enterozoic. When you say hematozoic, that is a parasite that lives inside your red blood cells. A very good example of this one is Plasmodium. A very good example is your Plasmodium species, no, the causative agent of malaria. And then your cytozoic, these are parasites living inside the cells of tissues. Again, cytozoic, these are parasites living inside the cells of tissues. A very good example of a cytozoic parasite is your Isospora species. Okay, and then your Cenozoic, these are parasites that lives inside your body cavities. They reside inside your body cavities. Okay, a very good example of this Cenozoic parasite, you have your Manzonella ozardi. And then enterozoic. Enterozoic, this is a parasite that lives inside the lumen of your intestines. Okay, enterozoic, inside the lumen of your intestines. You have a lot of nematodes actually that are enterozoic parasite. Okay, and yes, in case of the disease cause, okay, your ectoparasite, this one will cause an infestation since it is located or they reside superficially, while your endoparasite, you call it as infection. Okay? Your endoparasite will cause infection, while your ectoparasite will cause infestation. Okay? And yes, your pathogenic parasite and non-pathogenic parasite. Okay, you have your pathogenic parasite. This one causes harm to the host by its mechanical, traumatic, and toxic activities. Okay, it can bore, it can release toxins, and others. Okay, for your pathogenic parasite, the migration of this parasite can cause irritation. Okay, under your pathogenic parasite, you have what you call a super infection. Okay, and so because of course this pathogenic parasite will cause infection, and infection, of course, that is the invasion of your parasite into the body of man and or animals. And this infection is caused by endoparasite. Your superinfection, this is seen when a person harboring a parasite is reinfected with the same species of parasite. Again, a superinfection is a condition or a phenomenon where a person harboring a parasite is reinfected with the same species of parasite. Okay, and yes, of course, you have your zoonosis. Zoonosis. Okay, this is a zoonosis. This is a parasitic infection which humans acquire from animals. Okay, again, zoonosis, this is your parasitic infection which humans acquire from animals. And then your pathogenic, your non-pathogenic, of course, does not cause injury to your host. It does not cause injury to your host. It will somewhat cause just a mild irritation. Okay, moving on. You have your parasite. Your types of parasite based on relationship. Okay, you have your obligate parasite. This is a parasite that cannot exist without a host. Cannot complete, of course, the life cycle without spending time in a parasitic relationship. That is for your obligate parasite. Example of this one is your Leishmania species. Your facultative parasite, this one can be parasitic when accidentally eaten or enter a wound or other body orifice. And please note that this facultative parasite is capable of a parasitic or free living existence. And this one can live without a host. And then you have your intermittent parasite. This one is a parasite that feeds on the host and leaves the host at intervals, or it visits to what we call this it visits for nutrition, and then after eating, then it will leave. Okay, and then your incidental parasite, this one occurs occasionally in an unusual host. An example of your incidental parasite is your Ancylostoma caninum. Okay, and so you have as such for your Strongyloides stercoralis. This one is a very good example of facultative parasite. Moving on, you have your erratic parasite. Your erratic parasite, this one is a parasite which invades or becomes fixed in an organ which is not its usual habitat. Example of this one, your Ascaris lumbricoides. The usual habitat is your intestines, but then it can migrate go into your lungs. Okay, and then you have your spurious parasite. This one is a freely of living organism that parasitize other hosts, having merely passed through the intestines and are recovered in a living or dead state from your human feces. Okay, it parasitize other hosts. Okay, let's say for example, here is a fish that contains a parasite and nakain mo po yung parasite and sorry, here is a fish that is infected with a parasite. Nakain mo yung fish, that is infected with the parasite, and then what they call this one will just be passed out in your feces. And then you have your pseudoparasite. This one is an artifact. Okay, and so this one is an artifact. It is just it is mistaken as a parasite. And then you have your host. Of course, your host, this is the living organism that harbors the parasite. Of course, this one provides a physical protection and nourishment to your parasite. You have your kinds of host. You have your definitive host. This definitive host here, accordingly, is either a vertebrate or invertebrate, and it harbors the sexually mature stage of the parasite. And then your intermediate host, it harbors the immature or sexual stage of the parasite. Again, it harbors your immature or asexual stage of the parasite. You have two types. You have your first intermediate host and your second intermediate host accordingly. For your first one, it harbors the larval state, while your second intermediate host accordingly, it harbors the infective stage of the parasite to humans. Okay? And then you have your accidental host. Accidental host, this is a host other than the normal host that harbors the parasite. Let's take a look, for example, your Ancylostoma caninum. The normal host of this one is your dogs, but then humans can be infected with this, and in such cases, you call your human as an accidental host. Your paratenic host, this one harbors the parasite in an arrested state. Okay, again, your paratenic host harbors the parasite in an arrested state or development. Probably there is no life cycle. However, this parasite can continue its life cycle in a suitable host accordingly. And then you have your reservoir. Your reservoir host, it harbors the parasite that is parasitic to humans for your reservoir. Again, it harbors the parasite that is parasitic to humans, and from this reservoir host, okay, and so humans may become infected. Okay, and so this can be a wild or domestic animal, or this can be an invertebrate. And then you have your vector, the host that transmit the infective stage of parasite to man. Okay, for your for your vector, sorry. The vector, again, the host that transmit the infective stage of parasite to human. You have two types accordingly. You have your biologic vector and your mechanical vector. When you say biologic vector, there is an essential life cycle that takes place in the parasite. Okay, for your biologic vector. Essential, this one is essential in the life cycle of a parasite. There is a development in your biologic vector. There is the development of the parasite inside your biologic vector, while in your mechanical vector, it only transports the parasite. It only transport the parasite. It is not essential in the life cycle of the parasite, but then again, it only transport the parasite. Again, no life cycle or no development that takes place in your mechanical vector. And then please note that a carrier or is a host also. A carrier is a human that harbors the parasite without showing symptom. Okay, and yes, with this, okay, and so they can serve as a potential source of infection. Okay, a carrier is a human again that harbors the parasite without showing a symptom. Okay, and so probably the carrier or the person that regarded as the carrier has is immunocompetent. Okay, and so that is why it does not show the individual does not show symptom, nor probably the person the parasite is under the what do you call this, probably the person is slightly infected as such, no? Okay. Let's let's move on to the characteristics of your parasites. They can be larviparous, which bears your living larva. An example of larviparous parasite is your Trichinella spiralis. Oviparous, okay, they lays eggs. They lay eggs which hatch after leaving the body. And an example of your oviparous is Ascaris. Parthenogenic, parthenogenetic or parthenogenic, that is the ability of a female parasite to produce eggs without being fertilized by your female. And a very good example of a parthenogenic parasite is your Strongyloides stercoralis. And then you also have your diurnal parasite, which occurs during the day. An example is your Loa loa. They are somewhat periodic. This the diurnal and nocturnal one here is periodic. Your nocturnal is it occurs during nighttime. Example, Wuchereria bancrofti. Okay? And then you have your protandry. Your protandry here is you have your male reproductive organs matures first before the female organs. Again, in protandry, male reproductive organs mature first before the female organs. Okay, let's take a look at your epidemiology before we move on. When you say epidemiology, this one is a field of science dealing with the relationships of various factors that determine the frequency and distribution of infectious process or disease in a community. Okay, and so yes, because clinic or parasitic infection actually is still common among the third world countries. Okay, and so let's take a look at your what they call this disease occurrence. No, you have sporadic, your endemic, your epidemic, and your pandemic. When you say sporadic, this one is occasional. Uh, what do you call this? Your yes, disease occurrence. Now, when you say sporadic, a disease which occurs occasionally in one or few members of the community. Okay? Let's say for example, in your community, in your barangay, paisa-isa lang po for this one. And then endemic, this one is a disease which occurs in a relatively steady, moderate level. Endemic, this one is always present. This one again, an endemic, the disease is always present in the community. Let's say, for example, your malaria that is endemic in Palawan, there is always a case, a moderate number of cases of malaria in Palawan. Okay, and then epidemic, if there is a sharp rise in the incidence or an outbreak of considerable intensity. Epidemic is an outbreak. Okay, there is an increase. Uh, there is an increased incidence of the disease in a given area. And then pandemic, this one is worldwide. Okay, and so if a disease has been disseminated over extensive areas of the world, there is an increased incidence in an increased area of population. Okay, or somewhat worldwide. That is for your pandemic. Example, of course, of a pandemic is your COVID-19 pandemic. Buong mundo po affected. Okay, and there is an increase in the cases. Okay, let's take a look at your sources of parasitic infection. Of course, your parasitic infections originate from various sources and are transmitted, of course, by various routes accordingly. Excuse me. And yes, sources, of course, you have a contaminated source. Let's take a look. You have your contaminated soil, water, or food. Okay. In your contaminated soil, let's say, for example, these are sources. Contaminated soil. If a soil lang, if not contaminated, then this cannot be a source of infection. This cannot be a source of parasitic infection. Contaminated soil. When you say contaminated, may laman po siya na ova. It has an ova. It has a larva. Sorry, it has an ova. It has a larva. That when you ingest or uh, when exposed to your tissue or when you ingest or when you inhale, okay, so the ova or the parasite is transmitted to you, somewhat ganon. Okay, so sources, of course, most common actually source of parasitic infection, you have your contaminated soil, water, or food. And then also your vectors and sick vectors, like you have your uh, flies, your mosquitoes, such, your bugs, animals also, these ones can be a source of parasitic infection, either your domestic animals or wild animals, like let's say your dogs, okay, and so they can be a source of infection if they are harboring a parasite. Other persons accordingly, you have, sabi natin kanina, you have carriers, the ones that do not show symptoms, and of course, your patients. Your patients when you work in the hospital or when you work in a healthcare facility, okay, and so your patients can be a source of infection. That is why you need also to wear personal protective equipment. No, and then of course your own self in case of auto-reinfection or auto-infection or auto-reinfection. Auto-infection in cases of you have your what do you call this? Fecal oral transmission, and then internal auto reinfection. Okay, fecal oral transmission and then internal auto reinfection. Others, of course, you have your contaminated beddings, contaminated clothing of a person. Okay, moving on, let's take a look at your modes of transmission. Modes of transmission, you have most common, of course, is ingestion. Most common, of course, ingestion of contaminated soil, contaminated food, contaminated water. Okay, ingestion. Okay, again, this one is the most common mode of transmission. Again, okay, nakain mo pagkain na may lamang Ascaris ova as such. And the rest, no? Nainom mo yung tubig na may lamang Indamoeba histolytica, okay, as such. Okay, moving on, you have your skin transmission. Skin transmission, you have here your larva, probably. By your larva, or in case of hookworm infection, the larva penetrates the skin. Okay, and so they will, what they call this, penetrate the skin. They will mechanically bore your skin to enter. In cases of schistosomiasis, your cercarial larva will penetrate also the skin. Okay. Another, aside from skin transmission, inhalation is also possible. Inhalation is also possible in cases of, yes, example of parasite that is transmitted via inhalation is your Enterobius vermicularis. Then vector transmission, you have actually a lot for this one for your insects, no? And then direct transmission, you have either congenital. Okay, congenital, that is in cases of uh, trichomoniasis. Sorry, congenital, that is in cases of toxoplasma, no? Toxoplasma, that is transplacental. And yes, direct transmission po yun. Malaria also can be transmitted accordingly, according to my reference. And yes, other than that, sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse in cases of trichomoniasis. Trichotivage can be transmitted via sexual intercourse. Gingival amoeba can be transmitted via kissing, and this kissing is a direct transmission. And then you also have one iatrogenic, sorry, transmammary in cases of strongyloides and ancylostoma duodenale. Transmammary in cases of strongyloides and ancylostoma. And then your iatrogenic transmission, that is in case of blood transfusion. You are transfusing a malaria infected blood, or what you call this, in organ transplantation. You have the possibility of uh, transmitting toxoplasma in case of organ transplant. Yes. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at the factors that intensify parasitic infections. Actually, these are your socioeconomic factors, no? You have your geographical location and climate, your unsanitary practices, the location, your location actually. The location somewhat affects the transmission, no? Okay. And then unsanitary practices. Yes. Okay. And so the community, in the community wala po silang restroom, okay? Or yes, wala silang restroom. Tumatain na lang po sila sa may river or wherever, then it will intensify parasitic infection. Social condition and age. Your social condition. Okay, and so it will somewhat define, no, social condition. Are they poor? Are they rich? No, because if the person is somewhat rich or somewhat wealthy, okay, and so if the person is somewhat wealthy, he has actually access to he has access to healthcare. He has access uh to the ones that will to the barriers, to the ones that will decrease the parasitic infection, no? Okay, and then age also, if yung bata, okay, and so yes, the age, your kids, of course, hindi pa nila alam. Okay, and so lahat po nilalagay sa bibig. Okay, if they don't know if that is contaminated or not. They don't know if that is clean or not, no? And then your culture and customs also affects, no? Yung mga kumakain ng raw and the rest. And then migration of the population, probably the yung nag-migrate is a carrier or somewhat a reservoir, no? And then religion. Religion also will intensify your parasitic infection. Of course, it depends on the belief naman. Okay, methods of diagnosis. You have clinical and laboratory methods usually. Okay, and so you can make use of laboratory methods, direct fecal smear, DFS, KTS, or what you call the serologic testing, or you can make use of what you call this other clinical medical methods like X-ray. And then, of course, your doctor's eye naman. Okay, treatment, you have your medical or surgical procedure, and of course, the use of your antihelmintics. And then considerations for your treatment, of course, you have your severity and duration, and also the intensity of infection. Okay, and so you need to consider that is why at times in the laboratory, doctors will require egg counting. Okay, and so the worm burden, at times nagre-request po sila ng ganon. Okay, and so also duration of the infection, and then intensity of the infection, and then availability and acceptability of the treatment. together with toxicity. Okay, and so this one naman is uh, hindi na po sa part natin, sa part na po ng uh, doctor and the patient. And then your probability of reinfection also is being considered in treating your parasitic infection. And of course, patient's nutritional status. Baka mamaya hindi pala puwede yung gamot, hindi pala puwede yung intervention para doon. And then of course, your patient's ability to cooperate. Your patient's ability to cooperate. Baka mamaya naman, nagrereseta ka ng reseta na lang without asking if may pera bang pambili yung pasyente mo. Okay? Ayan, so as such. Also still in this one in considerations, you still need to consider the socio-economic factors pa rin. Okay? And prevention and control. Of course, you have to reduce the sources of infections. You reduce the sources of infection. So for example, okay, so you reduce your sources of infection. Okay, uh, by putting up what you call this, your septic tanks as such. Or, yes, reduction of sources of infection, water treatment, and the rest. Education on personal prophylaxis to prevent spread of infection and reduce opportunities of exposure also. And then sanitary control of water, food, living and working conditions, and waste disposal, of course. And then destruction of reservoir host and vectors. Yes, again, so you destroy your, of course, you destroy yung mga pinamumugaran ng lamok. Okay, and so, and others. And then construction of biologic barriers to the transmission of parasite. Okay. And then finally, for your quality control in parasitology, of course, what you call this yearly review of your standard operating procedures on your collection, transport, processing, and reporting of your results. And then, of course, a trained personnel. Training. Okay. A trained personnel or training and training of your personnel. And then proficiency test program. Proficiency. In clinical parasitology, may proficiency test po ito. Okay. And so, bibigyan ka po ng usually in NECWAS. Okay, and so for this one. And then continuing professional program. Okay, and so you do trainings, no? Okay, and so mag-train ka in malaria and the rest. And then preventive maintenance of the microscope, centrifuge, water bath, and other equipment that is utilized in clinical parasitology. And of course, daily check on all your equipment and glasswares that is utilized. Of course, daily check, dapat po malinis, bago gamitin, and the rest. Okay. And yes, let's take a look at your sample and your typical parasite, usual parasite that is seen in this sample. Okay, for your information po, our main sample received in the clinical parasitology section is stool. Okay, and so that is why if you will work in a clinical parasitology section of the laboratory, then you expect na tae po ang lagi mong kasama. Maging reyna ka po ng tae dito. Okay, and so you have here your stool. Again, usually po, stool po ang sample natin dito. Bihira po tayong magkaroon ng blood. Okay, stool samples. You have your stool. Of course, saan po siya galing? Organ of, what you call this? Organ of origin, intestines po, intestinal tract. You have here your, what you call this? Parasite that can be seen. Of course, you have your stool that is fresh or preserved or what you call this? from your sigmoidoscopy, and then impression smear or your scotch tape swab. No, you have here examples of parasites that can be seen. You have your Entamoeba histolytica, Giardia lamblia, Ascaris lumbricoides. What else? Trichomonas hominis, Enterobius vermicularis, hookworms, Trichuris trichiura, and the rest. Okay? For your whole blood, you have Plasmodium species. Whole blood, I mean, what you call this, preparation of your malarial smear can be done in hematology naman. Okay? And so whole blood, you can see your Plasmodium species here. Whole blood that can be either anticoagulated, and then of course to produce your thick and thin smear, and then of course your wet smears. No, you have your Plasmodium species, your Microfilaria, Trypanosoma, and others. And then you have your sputum, your sample sputum, or your bronchial lavage from your lungs. Of course, you have or your what do you call this, bronchial aspirate, and the rest. No, you have your Pneumocystis carinii, and then Paragonimus wistermani. Okay, and so this can be seen in your sputum or bronchial lavage, or what they call these samples from your lungs. And then from your CSF, you have your Taenia solium in cases of cysticercosis, Naegleria fowleri, a Acanthamoeba species. This one can be seen in your cerebrospinal fluid samples, of course, located in your central nervous system. And then your bone marrow aspirate. Bone marrow aspirate, you have your Donovani, Leishmania donovani, and then skin scrapings, also skin scraping from your cutaneous ulcers, or skin snips or biopsy, you have your leishmania and microfilaria, vaginal or urethral discharge. You can see Trichomonas vaginalis and Schistosoma hematobium. And then you have your aspirate from the liver and spleen. You can see Echinococcus or Entamoeba histolytica or Leishmania donovani. And then you have from your muscle, you have your what you call this, from your muscle, you have muscle biopsy, you have Taenia solium, Trichinella spiralis, and others.